the second half of our first class on the Darshanopanisad. Darshan, of course, means this clear seeing, to go and see an illumined soul or a spiritual being has come to be known as darshan, but it's actually a word used for philosophy, that there are systems that are darshans, like the six orthodox darshanas. And this Upanishad is also named that, Darshanopanisad. So they're trying to have you come and see Dattatreya, no doubt, and see Samkriti, learn from Dattatreya in this story-like Upanishad, which has that personal touch to it. Upanishads are good for that. They're both non-dual, and they also have this qualified non-dualism and the personalities, these divine personalities in them, many of them. And of course, we said they have also references to different aspects of the Divine Mother. And now we're finding out that there's a small amount of them that are very much in accord with the Yoga Darshana. So Vedanta and Yoga coming together here, probably since Patanjali, the closest that has happened to the world as far as the continuance of yogas was Vedavyasa's commentary on Shankara's, on Patanjali's system. So that's very important. And also Shankara himself mentioned yoga and did commentary on it. So those were that was the original yoga that was brought forward. Again, in commentary over the centuries that were going by until finally Vivekananda arrived here with the four yogas again and taught that as Krishna did in the old times. That's what we need to focus in on here, and let the other minor limbs and minor yogas go by or go on as they will. But we need to focus, especially as souls who are interested in these higher limbs, not being stuck on lower limbs, but where the fruit is really blooming and ripening is at these higher limbs of samyama, they call, where concentration and samadhi, meditation and samadhi, these three things, these three higher limbs get realized by the practitioner. And we were just looking at this new chart that's been placed here, a sort of further representation of this chart that was an old war horse. And maybe over the course of the next hour or tomorrow's class, I can show you even another tree of yoga chart that we used. See if you recall it, where we're talking about harvesting the fruits of yoga at the upper limbs. That was one we put out too. That was more accented in one of the Upanishads we studied, in the Amritanada Upanishad. So as far as this chart concerns, we reached up to Pratyahara, and we took a quote about it and talked about the two aspects that he mentions there about what Pratyahara really is. And now let's read actually in the Upanishad in full what he's talking about for this fifth limb called Pratyahara. Usually very difficult to attain, because in an age where beings' senses are focused on objects as if that were the natural run of things, very few people think of, oh, maybe I ought to take my mind off of objects and put it somewhere else. As my teacher used to say, put it on the eternal subject, take it off of the objects, put it on the eternal subject, because the object can become infernal objects, and then you need the eternal subject to square off with that. That's you, actually, the eternal subject in Vedanta. That's the true self, or Atman. And in order to see that, you're going to have to make that the center of your attention. But these various objects consisting of the five elements and their allurement to the five senses is what's being talked about usually at the practice level of pratyahara. But he's saying here that practicing pratyahara is one thing, but doing the practice in knowledge that everything is Brahman is a completely different level of understanding of pratyahara. So that's really good information that an illumined soul, only an illumined soul could give, not a faithful follower of a dualistic philosophy or a scientist. They can't give that. Only a non-dualist of the highest realization who has reached and experienced the highest level of samadhi can give that kind of distinction and information. The others are giving teachings, but they're not giving it at that level. So let's go on and then read out of the Upanishad itself, because we're almost halfway through it already, although there are some other charts to show that are going to be very interesting. So straight from the lips of this illumined soul, Dattatreya, he says, I will now tell you about pratyahara. To use force and divert the sensory organs, which normally travel according to their nature, is pratyahara. So it's admitted that the senses are outgoing by nature. That's in the Mundaka Upanishad, you hear that too. The senses are defective. Why is that, teacher? Because they're outgoing by nature. So it's nobody's fault. It's just the way the senses are. And because they're outgoing, then they espy the objects. And because they're outgoing, the five elements get coagulated into objects. And when they become coagulated into an object, you can't see them anymore. So it's not only Brahman that disappears, but the building blocks of nature disappear until someone comes and dissects it and looks at it. Then when they dissect it and look at it, they get attached to it even more. In the case of our Western science. But in the case of a seer, they get more and more detached from it when they see what it consists of. Basically emptiness. That it's empty of substance, vibrating particles, changing at a billionth of a second, number one. And number two, it's empty of the ability to fulfill you, which is happening in the scientist's life, where he becomes demented or crazy or commits suicide, or gets depressed, or gets old, loses his facility and his intellect and so forth. But the seer is detached from the entire process and its result. Cause and effect, that's called. He's seen it and then he's detached from it. He didn't get further attached into it, say to make money or say to get fame. And that's what happens when you follow Hatha Yoga. Those are the three main gripes about Hatha Yoga, according to the luminaries, is that they increase your attention on the occult powers. They want you to, they seek longevity, longer life, so they can enjoy more, the objects more. Therefore, they become deeper ingrained as a habit in you. So the last time you come back, you're attached to objects instead of free from them like these seers are. They detach from them, so their next lifetime is free of them. And so there are risks involved in that, as well as letting yourself out of this great boon called samadhi. That's the third problem with it, is that then you don't realize your divine nature as being the eternal subject rather than the infernal object. So again, to use force to divert the sensory organs which naturally travel according to their nature is called pratyahara. So it's your nature to go out, your mind tells the senses, but it's my nature to go in, the intellect tells the senses. So that's why it's you've got permission to use force. It's your nature to go out. I'm sorry, I can't follow you. So a renunciate or a monk or a person would give up family, would give up home, give up money, give up job, give up children, would give up everything, because that's all outgoing life and his nature is ingoing. The Lord is internal, kingdoms of heaven are within. So that doesn't really need permission in most cases, but you have it if you should think that you need it, to go ahead and go with your own nature. not the outgoing nature of the senses. So again, one sentence of one sloka, you can just go on and under the light of Dattatreya's teaching, expand on it forever. Those who know Brahma, that's Lord Brahma, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, the first of the Trinity. Those who know Brahma say that seeing whatever we see as the form of Brahman is pratyahara. So you'd go to Lord Brahma, the one whose great mind projected all this, and ask him about that. Sort of like Samkriti before was going to Surya, the sun god, and asking him what the nature of light and darkness was. And now he is come to Dattatreya, who is the Lord in human form, manifestation of Vishnu. And then he's finding out that those who inquire from Lord Brahma will know that that Brahma can do what he does because he knows it's all Brahman. And other gods might not be able to do that in that way. They think their realms are real, just like we think this realm is real. So that's an interesting point. Pratyahara also is doing clean or unclean acts as those belonging to Brahman. Further, doing daily religious activities and dedicating them to God, and similarly doing the activities which we desire, is also pratyahara. So the knowing the difference between good and bad acts, and knowing the difference between offering acts to God and taking them to the self, is also pratyahara. See? So a lot of people don't know the difference between good and bad, it seems. It's unthinkable for a dharmic person, but that's just the way it's going on out there. I saw so much evidence of that just on my trip over here from Hawaii. So just don't know what to do and what not to do. And that's a teaching as old as Samkhya. Lord Kapila brings it up too. There's acts of stupefaction, there's acts of bad stupefaction, and there's acts of good stupefaction, he says. So you're going on doing acts that should be offered to Brahman, but you're taking the fruits to yourself, you know. But to the work you have the right, but not to the fruits, the Lord tells you. So that's all not dharmic, it's tad-dharmic. So pratyahara needs to come in and clarify. Apart from this, inhaling air and stopping it is also pratyahara. So breathing in, holding, breathing out has to be done. It's almost as if you have, before you do pranayama, you have to have some little knowledge of pratyahara. You know, what to take and what not to take, Gaudapada would say in his Karika. There are different samadhis, you know, what to completely give up is a kind of samadhi, and what to accept at certain times and not at others is another kind of samadhi. And what to accept conditionally, usually, generally, is a kind of samadhi. And what to absolutely take to yourself is the highest samadhi. And this is the way it is in the province of the enlightened, in the land of the seers. They know these, so he puts it very simple. In Sanskrit and in English, it comes out very simple. And so you can use any one of these limbs of yoga, you know, as a proof for the other. Or maybe you could say as a proof that Brahman is. Otherwise, you're just doing a practice with no reason, right? You're doing a practice because someone told you should. Sort of like going to church once a week. Somebody told you that. You have to do that or you'll be damned. So you just go on doing that as a habit. And so it's much the same here with these limbs. If you just hear that you should do that and you start doing it, but the essential information or intention has been taken away from it, then you don't have that, what we just found out before we ended the first half of the class, that pratyahara is Brahman. You know? And first time we found that out probably was in Shankara, because we're not usually looking at these minor Upanishads yet. this is all a special thing that we're doing here in SRV, but if you've read Shankara, which usually most people haven't, but some people who start to get into the Gita and a few other scriptures that are main scriptures of India, they'll start to get interested and they'll start to go deeper. So they'll go towards something like Shankara, and that's where you'll find these teachings that at that point are a little bit shocking to you. That you thought it should be very sequential and end at some sort of definitive place. But you didn't know that they were doing the practice all along the way in the knowledge that all was Brahman, and that they were also Brahman. This Brahman was knowing Brahman as it did the practice that led to Brahman, and those were all one thing. Is, like meditating and the act of meditating, the thing to meditate upon, and the space that you meditate on within. Avadhuta says, there's a verse on that. It says, are all one thing. So this is the way they conduct practice when they want to make sure to be free of goal-oriented fruits and attachment to them. You didn't give up the world and go to God just to get attached to spiritual practice, right? You should have been attached to God, and that's why you gave up the world, because it wasn't God. And then when you reached God, you realized that you had always been attached to God, and the rest was just some sort of dream you were having along the way. If you spend a long time in spiritual practice, many lifetimes, say, if you've come to know that you've, as we were talking about last night in satsang, that you've, and a little bit today too, is that, you've been doing this for a long time, and this knowledge is in you already, and, the game's afoot, Sherlock Holmes style, is that when you get into this life, you can hardly wait to tear the veils off of it. Maya thought it could flummox me, or, society and parents thought that they could pull the wool over my eyes so I would be their favorite possession, or religion thought it could dupe me with duality and fundamentalism, and you're not having any of it, you see. And these souls waking up quick, like Shankara at 8 years of age, and go to a great teacher like Vivekananda in his teens, went to Sri Ramakrishna. So this is like the game's afoot, means I can hardly wait to disprove everything that's here, and disprove people's attachment to everything. So show them why they should not be fearful, why they should not doubt, why they should not be in ignorance, and why they should not suffer, based on the premise that only Brahman is real and all else is not. And so you know this when you come here, and so you say, now how do I go about doing it in this particular society at this particular time? So I've been teaching that for a long time and been listening to it from my teachers, and so I finally had a kind of overall vision. And before we finish up with Pratyahara, and since it's come up right now, let's look at this new chart, and I'll tell you how it came about. Is basically how to say it to people. And we bridged it at one point. We bridged the fact that all of this is Brahman, and we should keep that in mind as we go through the processes of awakening. It's like believing the seers on face value, just giving them the credit because that's their province of the Enlightenment. They know, and I don't, so I should listen to them. And take that on face value and prove it to myself later. I have questions and doubts. If they satisfy them, then I'll get my proof. So you just take the stance. It's not a stance of insincerity then. Like, I don't believe it. I doubt it. And, I doubt that they're real. They're not authentic. Spirituality doesn't exist. God doesn't exist. And Buddha didn't believe in God and all that kind of nonsense. So basically, you're giving them credence. You're giving them on the surface of things the authority to tell you what is real and what's unreal. So if you're doing that in this day and age to a society, I was thinking, how could you do that because you hear about the mind-only schools in India, like Buddhism's mind-only school and so forth. And so, basically it's that everything's rising up off the mind and falling back into the mind. And that's gives you the illusion of movement, gives you the illusion of action, gives you the illusion of cause and effects, gives you all this rising and falling of things, most of the time without knowing that you're observing the rising and falling. You're not aware of the observer yet. That's called witness, right? Witness consciousness. When you get good witness consciousness, like Shankara says, dissolve the words into the mind, mind into the intellect, intellect into the ego, ego into the witness. Then what do you do with the witness? You dissolve it into Atman, and then you dissolve those into Brahman. So this would be like an overall vision you could have, where you could accept the truth point blank, face value, based on the fact, the only premise you would have to accept is that that the mind is responsible for everything. Like he's saying here, those who know Lord Brahma know that Brahman, seeing Brahman is Pratyahara. So you go to these highest seers who have transcended and also presented you this dream. So that's why I'm calling this chart the absolute reality's inscrutable dream. Because if you philosophize yourself into a hole someday, and you're just looking at all these different views, and you're going round and round, you're trying to come to some apt siddhanta or conclusion about it, it's not that hard to do with a philosophy, but with the overall truth, it's very difficult to do. So what you would probably come up with is that, as Gaudapada puts in his Karika, all these things are dreams that the Atman is having. Because if you said the Atman doesn't dream, which Vivekananda did say, that actually the way he put it was, you're never in Maya, Maya is in you. So you have to become aware of this witness. So you see this chart is based upon there's the cosmic mind, and it's got individual, collective, and cosmic portions to it. Vyasti, Samasti, and Vyapti, they're calling it Vyapi. So the cosmic mind is responsible for everything that comes up because of the power of vibration in it. And if you wanted to give yourself an inner vision or a reason for meditation that could disprove everything unreal and prove the one reality to you, then you'd want to start with that. So you have this mind that's threefold, that all the individuals, the collective of all minds, and then the cosmic mind, which is, as we just said here, Lord Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva combined or conjoined. Then this mind is where the dream's taking place. And you can see what's beyond it is waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. So that's where ignorance hides, in this dream of birth, life, and death that people are going through all the time. Of course, if you're taking the body to be the self, you have no opportunity or no chance whatsoever of understanding this. Not you're body oriented and you believe the body is the self. That's the first evolutive Maya. And that continues on, that then you believe that the tiny little ego is the self, so that's also going to exempt you from any kind of a vision like this. But if you could somehow stand back and be the witness of all of this, and know that the cosmic mind can dissolve back into the Atman, as you see here, and the Atman back into Brahman, and then you find out what is it that's going through this process of dreaming, and you find out that that's these three states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. So you're going to have to awaken from all three of these. This is where everything's hiding, in those three states. and you're participating in it willingly. So you're sucked into believing that in a society that's, again, bodily oriented and physically oriented only, that waking state is the only state. So they're not even yet giving any credence to dreaming or deep sleep. Deep sleep doesn't occur to them, what that is. That only occurred to the seers of non-dual realization. They got into formlessness because of knowing that deep sleep was a veil of ignorance over the mind, and they penetrated through it. You might call that Rudra Granthi, between third eye and crown chakra. So this is absolute reality's inscrutable dream. So if you can just see it, it all starts in the mind, and the mind is suffering three phases of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. It's playing, it's dreaming in those phases. And when you awaken from those, then you're the witness, Sakshi Buddham. You witness everything that's going on in the mind. And it can become so refined that you can even witness what's going on in the collective mind, like Lord Brahma, like Lord Vashishta, for instance, and can go from place to place and help them out of darkness. And then you can realize too that you have to get beyond the Trinity, that the Trinity is also inside of form. And therefore, a kind of Maya is also attending upon the Trinity. And that when the Trinity transcends its position, it will become realized. And it will merge itself into the witness. Witness is also another word for Om, or the word, generally speaking. See, there's Om. So this is a way of, it's already been told us that this is a way of dissolving the mind. And five elements into the objects, and objects back into words and thoughts, and the thoughts back into intelligence, and intelligence back into the witness. So that witness station is a very important place to remember. So the quote up here, the seers have awakened, and they have yogic insomnia. But most of mankind lives under the hypnosis of the threefold delimiting powers of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. These are called gross, subtle, and causal bodies. Also, external, internal, and transcendental mind. These dream projections, realms, worlds, beings, objects, though subject to constant flux, are not empty. The mind and its dreams appear based within the Atman, the underlying conscious spiritual essence, who witnesses them rise and fall unaffectedly. So this would be the great insight that a person occupying witness consciousness in full would be benefited by. And knowing that all these things rise from the mind, fall back into the mind, but that the Atman is never affected by that. It's just like, much like you're not affected by your dreams. They don't really have any effect upon you. And sometimes you have a powerful dream or a vision or something, and that might be different. But basically, you can wake and dream and go into deep sleep for all 80, 90, 100 years of your life, and they don't have any effect on you. And the waking state, of course, has an effect on your emotions and on your samskaras, your mind. So it tends to remember those and will dredge them up again from lifetime to lifetime. It'll base other lifetimes upon those samskaras that collect in the mind. And so you could say that these souls who have this great insight like that are living most of the time in witness consciousness. That's what detachment is to them. You know, some 9 or 10 or 12 levels of detachment, depending on which system you look into it. So those who are occupying a level of Tivya Vairagya or Param Vairagya, they're always living in witness consciousness. And so it'd be very difficult for people to imagine what that's like, because these beings would be so detached to anything that happened, from the worst calamity to the most insignificant thing, from the greatest war to periods of no war, wouldn't affect them in the least, because the whole thing is a dream to them. And dream here, illusion, projection, all coming about because of the conditionings of this mind. And so when you're talking about the teachings that Dattatreya is giving to Samkriti right now, that's why Pratyahara is important to knowing Brahman, and why he's about ready to introduce us to the 10 forms of the 5 different concentrations, 5 different forms of dharana, so that we can really make all the connections inside of this vision. So this is a kind of chart that accompanied it in my way of thinking, is that if we could just think of ourselves as dreaming in the mind, it'd be sort of like starting at the first dana, in the heart sthana, and forgetting anything that happened before that. It's like it just was, some of that was even a nightmare, having to be born, having to die, and suffering in hell and all those things. But if you could just start at this vision where the mind is all there is, see the mind inside, doing its threefold process: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, inside the witness, inside the Atman, inside of Brahman. Then you've got this overall vision that forgoes all the risk of losing form and believing in some formless emptiness that has no substance. That's why I said here, these dream projections, realms, worlds, beings, objects, though subject to constant flux, are not empty. They're Brahman, but they're Brahman coming through, consciousness coming through the 3 states of the mind that's dreaming. That's all. So in and of themselves, then you'd say objects are empty, because we just said that. But as a constant reoccurrence, based on the fact that they would not be there if the Atman wasn't there. They're real, you see. So Swami Triguna Titananda said that just before he passed away. He came back to consciousness and said, Brahman's real, the world is also real. So that's opposite of what the Vedanta teaches you. Brahman's real, the world's unreal. So when leaving the body and leaving that waking state, dreaming state, deep sleep state, and seeing everything from the witness, then you see that nothing cannot be Brahman. Everything is Brahman. All that exists art thou, O Lord. As Jafar sings in his beautiful song, I finally realized that all that exists art thou. That's different than saying all things are Brahman. It's that Brahman is all things, you see. Because then you're going to step on some toes philosophically and probably upset some levels of practitioners' level of practice and understanding if you try and give them that information too early, or give it in the wrong at the wrong space and time, like he's talking about here. Samkriti, is checking all his knowledge of yoga, being an expert in yoga, with this master, with this past master. So it's very beautiful. So I think there's another quote on there. It's a very quick thing that I put together based on, if you could just only see yourself as the mind, and that these 3 states are your dreams. Waking, dreaming, deep sleep are all dreams, phases of the dream. And that Atman's having the dream. How could you say otherwise? What else could dream? There has to be a power to project a dream. So the dream is real from the standpoint of Brahman. It's unreal from the standpoint of the world. Sometimes they say that. But when consciousness shifts to witness, then becomes this opportunity to see. And the advisors would say, oh, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, they're all going through this every 24 hours. They're all experiencing these three things, but they're not waking up from that cosmic dream. And you have to go to Lord Brahma, to be able to tell him, beautiful, what you've projected there, let me beyond it now. See, I want to go beyond that dream. I want to wake up fully. I want to have yogic insomnia. So another quote down here, billions of mental bodies participate in the utilization of thought power present in the threefold mind, fashioning infinite forms of inventive design out of the original substance of primal existence. This is a veritable mass collective mental dream that is taking place at different levels of vibration. O dreamer, awake, you must, you must. A beautiful line of a song that we have in our tradition. So a little sidetrack quickly to give you this, what I hope can be for you a vision that you meditate on. There's the mind, my mind as a part of that, and I'm going through waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, and all of that is let's just call it ignorance. I don't know myself in it. I have to awaken from that to know myself. When I start to know myself, then I see the Brahman effulgence. That's right here. It says Brahman effulgence. I see this light coming off of deep sleep. And Divine Mother Kali, is being worshipped by all the devotees at that point. And then I reach that level of witness consciousness and merge in the Atman and merge in Brahman through the word. In the beginning was the word. So beyond beginnings, middles, and ends is this ultimate truth. Brahman and Shakti, if you want to call it that. So you can envision that very easily. It's not real thick philosophy. It's not too abstract for people just to envision that's the way it is. And at the same time they would hold a vision like that, they would not have to stumble on these words like emptiness or non-existence or asat, or take God with form out of the quotient somehow. As if you, being a non-dualist, then you can't have any deity or anything. And speaking of that, we should go on today and tomorrow about these 5 forms of concentration. So a little of this with Pratyahara and how that idea that Pratyahara is Brahman and how he's explaining it here. Now he says, I will tell you about the 5 types of dharana. A stage of meditation. Dharana means holding steady. Here we try to hold on, he tells Samkriti. Here we try to hold on to what we are meditating upon without wavering. So steady concentration, no wavering. Like we chanted that this morning. Yata dipo nivatasto nengati sopama smrita. Yogino yata chitasya yunjata yogam atmanaha. Like a candle in a windless place. Its flame steady and unflickering. So too is the mind of the yogi, the yogini, meditating on that. Atman, steeped in yoga, steeped in the practice of yoga. So holding steady, that applies very well here to this word dharana. So whether to read it to you or show it to you first, maybe read it to you first, and then I'll show you this chart on the 5 types. So he, this might be something even Samkriti hasn't heard much before. It might be like a signature aspect of Dattatreya's teachings, because he's a knower of reality at all levels. So he knows the old Adi Daiva Vidya, he knows the old Samkhya, see, and Patanjali later on then is going to, many thousands of years later than this conversation between Dattatreya and his student, he's going to start advising us to start meditating on the 5 elements. So it makes so much sense even now, 1300 years after Patanjali or so, because we don't know the 5 elements yet. We forget them. We're born into them. The senses see them. We don't know who formed them, where they came from, and we're studying them from the outside only. And we're not definitely respecting them very much. We're using them as resources and so forth and so on and on. So what is really knowing the 5 elements are these 5 kinds of concentration that Vedanta would give you. Probably then wasn't much of a new idea when it came to Patanjali putting together his Ashtanga Yoga. He said, based upon, the Upanishad had already told him, based upon elements, facts that all beings are familiar with. So what is it here that most of us are so familiar with but we don't know? It's air, earth, fire, water, and ether. Those are facts known to everyone, but we've never seen them. We've never seen their origin. We've never seen their true essence. And we've mistaken their use, because realized souls, since they've practiced pratyahara, are not attaching to them anymore. So everyone else is, right? So they must know that they have a different use than worldly people who are lighting candles and drinking drinks and, digging earth and excavating and, poisoning air and various things. So all the things that we complain about on the environmental level are actually just a result of not knowing the Pancha Mahabhutas, the 5 great elements, air, earth, fire, water, and ether. So this is a way back to Samkhya, all the way forward to Patanjali. That's many millennia you're talking about there. And everything in between. Like in the between would be Krishna saying, here's my 8-fold body, 5 elements and my mind and my intellect. Here's my 8-fold body. This is my outer body. Is that something you're supposed to read in the Gita and just say, okay, I'll take your word for it? Or is that a matter of reverence? Is that a matter of higher wisdom? It's a matter of having to contemplate it because generations have forgotten about it. A little introduction to what I'm about to read first then. So we started into it by saying, he says, here we must hold on to what we are meditating upon without wavering. So he gives you that first advice. When I give you this teaching, make sure you hear it and you hold on to it, meditate on it. The word would be alambana in Patanjali's time. So similar to the breath, he says, because he's just talked about pranayama and pratyahara, so he's connecting these limbs. Similar to the breath, dharana of air outside should be made. Dharana of fire in the stomach should be made. Dharana of fire outside is to be made. The fluid aspects of the body, the liquid aspects, are to be made. Dharana of water outside should be made. Which is why Patanjali had you meditating on rivers and oceans and, earth, water, then fire, then air, then ether. Dharana of the water outside should be made. In the earthy aspects of the body, dharana of the earth outside should be made. O sage, also it is necessary to chant the Panchabhuta mantras. So each element has a bijam to it. Ham, Yam, Ram, Vam, and Lam. So next week we'll look at those at the retreat. They have, the 5 elements are there, and the 5 that go with the chakras, and then each one of these seed words are there. So this was knowledge that's needed to be recovered, and in case Samkriti hasn't fully remembered, he's going ahead and telling him dharana on the Panchabhuta mantras are to be made. It is said that this very great concentration, this 5-fold concentration, destroys all sins. In the body, up to the knee is the aspect of earth. From the hip to the aspect, from the knee up to the hip is the aspect of water. From there up to the heart is the aspect of fire. From there up to the middle of the eyelids is the aspect of air. And then up to the middle of the skull is the aspect of sky or ether. In the aspect of earth, Brahma has to be placed. In the aspect of water, Vishnu is placed. In the aspect of fire, Rudra is placed. In the aspect of air, Ishvara is placed. And in the aspect of the sky, Sadashiva is placed. Hey, great sage, I will also tell you another dharana in the Jivatma. We'll wait on that one. And then go back to the actual chart to see how this translates as a visual. So the 5 types of dharana in Vedantic Yoga, which we've just read, we'll reiterate it with a visual here so that it can become a bit clearer. So I've summated into this quote on top what was just said, without changing it, but without so much information in between the essentials. Concentration of ether, air, fire, water, and earth should be made, replete with the chanting of the Panchamahabhuta bijams of Ham, Yam, Ram, Vam, and Lam. Place all of these, along with their specific deities, in the 5 sacred places of your body. So back to the beginning of the Upanishad. Please teach me the 8 limbs of yoga and the 5 sthanas. So if you want to know about the 5 sacred places in your body, then Upanishads also began to become open and probably help to give rise to the Kundalini Yoga system, because we have that Yoga Kundalini Upanishad we studied, where all of this has been outlined very, very completely with a lot of extra detail than Dattatreya is giving here. But you can see here that those 3 things are basically needed: meditating on the 5 elements, using their seed bijams, and placing them with the deities in the 5 places of your body. So that's like 5, that's 20 things really there that you have to do these 5 types of dharana in yoga. So the 6th limb is fleshed out here, you see. And I think it's fleshed out by taking things that everyone knew at the time, like the Upanishad says. This is based on things that are common to everyone. What's that? Yeah, the 5 elements, but also the 24 cosmic principles. Every philosophy up to the time of Dattatreya and Bast, all the way up to Patanjali later, was based on Adidaiva Vidya, the 24 cosmic principles. And as time went by, people forgot that, or it became old to them. Like nowadays, young people are telling me, this is all ancient, it's not of any use anymore. But you might as well be taking away my life when you say that to me. This is the truth to me. You can't take away the truth to someone who's living by it. So you can't, Dattatreya didn't get rid of the teachings of the ancient seers, neither did Patanjali get rid of the teachings of Dattatreya, who was thousands of years before him. Neither did Shankara do away with Patanjali's teachings when he came up with his sacred scriptures that he composed. So it's all, it's not even add-on, I think. It's just reiterating again and again with fresh insight in any given age by one of these great luminaries. And all playing off of each other in that kind of fashion. So you can see the main image here is of Nataraj, Shiva, and a devotee bowing. The 7 chakras are there inside of that devotee. And you can see up the middle of the deity are the 5 elements. So from earth, remember, from feet to knee to waist are the elements of earth and water. And then from the hips, the waist, to the heart is fire. And from fire to the middle of the head is air. And to the crown of the head, air to ether. So this is the way you look at the 5 elements as they're assigned to across the divine body, like Nataraj in this case, but also your own body. And so the devotee bowing there and saluting is thinking about this meditation on Sadashiva, which is ether basically, but that's of course the very highest. But you can see how then if we put across the board on this chart from earth, then it tells you start with Lord Brahma when you do dharana of earth, when you concentrate on earth and say the bijam, lam, and then put that at your own feet up to your knees. That's a visualization you do. So earth, you walk upon it, you kneel to it. However you want to think about this to make earth have a place in your meditation, to make it sacred. It supports you. It supports all beings. All beings walk across it. Otherwise, you're floating in space with no foundation, right? So this is how to divinize earth and how to include it into this fivefold meditation, concentration that's going to set you up for this singular meditation that you're going to have. That will then reveal the Vedanta philosophy to you as being the truth inside of you, which will put you into samadhi. Jumping ahead here a little bit on that. So from Vishnu then is to be placed there. This is the dharana. So body to the knee is the aspect of earth. From there to the hip is the aspect of water. And from the hip to the heart is the aspect of fire. So Vishnu, you see there, is put there, knee to waist, and thought of as water. Very good for Vishnu because he rests on a sea of snakes on the ocean of existence. So water, very essential to that vision. And the bijam would be vam. So lam, vam, we've done 2 kinds of concentrations with deities involved, with the elements included, and assigned them where? To your own body. The sthana, the location where they are to be thought of. And then go on with the 5-fold concentration and think about hip to or waist to heart. And this is where fire becomes very important. And the Rudra, that aspect of Shiva, Rudra is the deity there. So you invoke Rudra and you do your concentration on fire there in the company of Rudra, and your bijam, your mantra, as it were, is Ram, Ram, Ram. And then 3/5 of the concentration 6th limb of yoga is accomplished. And you're doing this probably as a practitioner, just like you would do dissolution of the mind, or just like you do meditation on the 24 cosmic principles. And so you see it can be very powerful if you're mastering one posture, and if you're controlling your breath, and then doing pratyahara based on that foundation, leading to this concentration. So everything's culminating, in this Ashtanga yoga practice. With, you might say, with its Vedantic background or atmosphere. So probably Dattatreya and Samkriti, not as ancient as Lord Kapila. But you can see like why the Upanishads are saying based on things known to all, because all the philosophers knew about Kapila and they still do. So this is age to age, taking these great teachings and amalgamating them, reiterating them for people's ears, and recreating them for practice, based on things that are common to all darshanas in India, Sanatana Dharma, and are being brought forward to people of different levels of conscious awareness from age to age. Because the yugas are declining, you see. And yoga is not the same, for instance, as it was. They're even trying to, trying to convince us that hatha is the latest form of yoga. So that's definitely not going to work with the seers. So because based upon these changes and these mutations, you might say, they're ongoing all the time, they're coming back and giving you this original Adidaiva Vidya and these original teachings based upon, like, say, the fivefold process, quintuplication process. And how you can comprehend this. So you can see now that it's not random that I put out 5 little books, starting, with Yoga Kundalini Upanishad, then going on to Manasana and going on to quintuplication process. So that this is all something that has been seen over time to happen if you can arrive at a witness consciousness and be able to spend some time with the truth. Say the break, like, truth is your best friend. All these qualities are your best friends. So do you not spend time with your best friends? They might not like that and desert you or disappear. You won't be able to find them next time you need them. So Rudra, fire, Ram, and the heart. Then Ishvara is the fourth of these 5 kinds of concentration. So you think of Ishvara, easy for us because in this day and age, we're looking at Ishvara as our Ishtam. Like Sri Ramakrishna, we meditate upon him in our heart. And he's in full regalia there and dressed down, as it were, with the company of his 16 direct disciples and Sri Sharda Devi, the Divine Mother Shakti, is actually with him in form this time, which is an amazing thing right there. Now, so of course, speaking just inside our own Ramakrishna order SRV lineage. So Ishvara put concentration of air, this what you know about air, and how you breathe it, how it gives life, and it doesn't even just have to be physical air. It can be the absence of air, like climbing a mountain. It makes you kind of dizzy, makes you kind of elated to be without air. So do away with it if you want in your meditation. Its physical form, and find that you live on a higher, rarefied oxygen. And that's what happened in the next case when Sadashiva is put with ether. And then you said hum, and you thought about ether. And meditation like this then opened up 5 kinds of ether. So 5 kinds of concentration led to the discovery of 5 kinds of ether. Bhutakasha, Pranakasha, Manakasha, Vijnanakasha, those, and the 5 sheaths that went with them. the quintuplication process burgeoned, and you were discovering deeper and deeper where the origin of these things were, essentially in Brahman, but you couldn't jump to them necessarily in Brahman. It's not given to everyone to say Pratyahara is Brahman and believe it. Pratyahara to most people is like, I have to do without oxygen. I have to scold myself. I have to take things away from my senses. That's what Pratyahara is to most people, and it's okay that it's that way. It's just given to a few people to know the goal before they reach it. And that's probably because they'd reached it already before. You can't surprise them anymore, some of these souls. It's like they're fully realized, so come what may, come illusion, come delusion, Sri Ramakrishna used to say. A magician that invited Maya to come, because he couldn't be fooled anymore by any sleight of hand or any trick that Maya could throw at him. Because he knew that all was Brahman, even that Maya had an existence in Brahman. Where else would it be? Poisonous in a snake, does it come from nowhere? But the snake doesn't die because of it. So that's that supreme witness consciousness we talk about. And there, of course, the word. So all of this gets then taken up and dissolved. Otherwise, you've got this nice little scenario down here, you see, because the middle, I should read it first before we say it on the chart. You say here, hey, Samkriti, or hey, yogi, let me tell you, there's another kind of concentration to be done other than this fivefold concentration. And it's very beautifully put. It's, I think, more specialized. So, great sage, I will tell you another dharani. In the Jivatma, that's the individual soul, that Lord Shiva who rules over everything and is the personification of wisdom should be placed. To get rid of all sins, the wise one should suppress the gods like Brahma back into the causative self and place avyakta, that which is not always clear and which is formless and which is the root cause, inside of your entire soul with the chanting of the pranava. It begins to get more concentrated here. He should control the sensory organs by mind and should merge them with the soul. So in this dharana, which is placed here, this is the main dharana, fivefold dharana, and then there's this other one that you can do as well. And whether that's a quick fix or it's only for specialized souls, it sounds to me more like it's going to be it's going to require a little bit more acumen, a little bit more adeptship to do that. Basically, it will rid you of all sins. So one of the things you're doing here is you're not suppressing the gods, are you? You're using the deities to help you. But here, you want to suppress all beings, even like Lord Brahma, back into the cause, into their cause. And what do you put in place of all that? Avyakta, the unmanifested. So these are for the followers of formlessness, who can do that, who can make that jump. Most beings are going to be like this soul, bowing to the form, doing the practice, saying the mantras, and so forth. And in that way, this is a special kind of dharana that he mentions on top of this fivefold dharana. So, yeah, very beautiful that we get to the fifth limb like that and have it filled out so well. The sixth limb, rather, after having the fifth limb of Pratyahara cleared up for us. And so then tomorrow we'll look at 6, 7, 8, or 7 and 8, the way that Dattatreya is explaining it to Samkriti. that after these dharnas are accomplished, or at least one of them, then the mind, the soul, is really ready for meditation proper. And so again, it kind of makes you think that just jumping into meditation the way sometimes we've done since the 60s, oh, just sit, close your eyes. Maybe that's a good experiment for a while. But you're going to need, especially if some awareness comes up in you, if some consciousness rises in you, if Kundalini is beginning to move, or even Udgata is beginning to stir, or inspiration is beginning to happen, because you sat like this and somebody told you to quiet your breathing, or even your breathing out, that you're going to need a lot of practice after that to realize it and to have it manifest itself and express itself at such a high level as Samkriti and Dattatreya are doing here for us in the Darshanopanisad. So, Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Gyanamurtin Dandvaititam Gagana Sadrisham Tatmaya Sharilaksham Ekam Nicham Nimalachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavati Tram Trigunat Rahitam Sadgurum Tanamami. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. We meditate upon the leader of our souls, through whose grace our ignorance is dispelled, who is beyond good and bad, pleasure and pain, life and death, and all other pairs of opposites. We recognize that one as the only witness to the changing phenomenon of this universe. May we, through that grace, go beyond darkness and delusion, realize the truth in this very life. Om, peace, peace, peace. Peace be unto us, peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat.